Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot and a member of PMDG's tech team. Let's have a look into the brand new update that Robert Randazzo has posted on both 777 Progress Update as well as 737 updates, both for PC and Xbox that are down the pipe. Now we are going to start with the 777 today, as Robert has given us some rather interesting information into it. So let's start with this one. Now, this picture gives us a really good insight into the level of detailing that we find on the plane. Just have a look at the reflections that we can see on the end of the wing there just before the flaps, and have a look at the detail that we can find in the main landing gear bay. Overall, a really good looking picture, and I can just say that it does really look that awesome right in the sim as well. Now, coming on from this picture, let's move over to one that is actually a little bit more interesting, because it does show us a little bit of action around the airplane. And this is the one that I'm referring to. Now, over here we can see the glowing of the overheated brakes when the brakes have really been used to the maximum power they can. Now, Robert does say in his update that this is still a work in progress, and they are working to find ways to make the frequency shift out of the emissive layer of the model so that it is more closely matches the actual color your eye would see when you happen to be standing near them while they are overheated. The light waveform created by this level of heat creates interesting visual effects, and they are trying hard to recreate that in the sim. Now, well, first of all, why do we see the brakes glowing that strong then? Well, as you can imagine, brakes can get pretty hot. We've got an airplane here with a maximum landing mass that is just over 250 tons and a maximum takeoff mass that's more like 350 tons. If you stop an airplane like this close to V1 at maximum takeoff weight with an engine failure so that you only have half the reversers available, those brakes will get hot. Likewise, when you land in 45 degrees hot Dubai in summer, and on the tarmac it's more something like 60 degrees or something, since the sun heats up the runways, and you just don't use your reversers and just go fully into the brakes, believe me, that is going to have some awesome effect on the brake temperatures. Now, brake temperatures themselves, on the sensors they will go up to something like 500, 600, 700 degrees, but internally the brakes easily get over 1000 degrees centigrade, and that is really what makes them glow like this. The metal just completely starts glowing like lava, and it looks really impressive, but you don't want to get close to the brakes when that happens. Now, luckily the good news is that there are fuse plugs built into the tires, so when a certain temperature is exceeded, those fuse plugs are going to melt, and the tire is just going to vent the air inside without exploding, like you could imagine to happen if you just had the 1000 degrees warm brakes heating up the air inside the tires. And believe me, those 200 psi in there, they are gonna make for quite some boom. There's actually protection measures for ground staff, how they shall approach the wheels when the brakes are that hot. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of how much energy there is involved, and of the temperatures that are involved in there. Now, let's go over to the little bit more technical part of the update. Robert has said that since the testing commenced 6 weeks ago, the beta testing team has opened 541 reports, of which 432 have been resolved. And while that does not give you that much of an indication as to the actual technical state of the product, it does give you a good idea of the trend in which they are approaching a release. Obviously, those remaining $109, if I just did the mathematics correctly, are not going to be all. Whenever testers do more flight, there will be more stuff that is going to come up. However, it is a good thing there to see, you know, like 80% of the issues that have been reported over the past 6 weeks actually being resolved. Now, these issues obviously go from very small things like, hey, could we get a little bit more dust on a switch, or there's a scratch mark where there shouldn't be one, all the way up to, you know, why is the plane not decelerating in VNAV, just as an example. That is, by the way, not an actual example from the actual testing, even though it is a rather interesting theory there, looking at the plane's deceleration model as in VNAV, especially when the aircraft is flying on a geometric path segment, which basically means you got one waypoint that you got to cross at a certain altitude, then you got a next waypoint that you got to cross at a certain altitude, both defined by constraints on the arrivals, and then you got to fly that one down. The way this Boeing does this is that it is going to go for a constant descent rate on the way in. However, Boeing actually does not build in a deceleration segment if you pass through 10,000 feet, so the pilot will have to use the speed brake for that. That's definitely something that was new to me as a 737 pilot flying the 777. Now, a couple other things that are really interesting there. Let's think for a moment about speed constraints. The 777, compared to the 737, is not able to take just a speed constraint without an altitude constraint on the legs page. That is something that was certainly new to me, something that I thought was a bug, but which turned out it wasn't. The plane just can't take speed constraints without associated altitude constraints, and therefore, when you load a SID or a star from the database and there is a waypoint which only has a speed constraint, but not an altitude associated with it, that constraint is just going to be missing from the legs page. You actually got to go into the chart and insert those manually, and then obviously add a reasonable altitude constraint to it. For example, just take the next one down and go, for example, 220/3000 above, if 3000 is the platform altitude. Stuff like that. So pilots actually got to enter that manually. It's quite surprising how much more basic the 777 FMC is compared to the features that you got in the 737 FMC. I was rather shocked to see a highly modern aircraft like the 777 to actually be that basic in certain points. Now, do please accept my apologies that I can't go into any greater detail about the testing going on, but this is just a little bit of an insight from myself here. So going back to those 432 solved bugs, Robert does say that they're using this trend data as part of the decision making and how they approach scheduling a release. This transitional phase tends to be followed by a phase during which they will get ahead of the reporting curve just slightly, but they will see a change in the character of the inbound reports. There is a natural phase when instead of reporting I did X, the airplane did Y, and it should have done Z, the testers begin to report aspirational things such as, would it be possible to add this feature, or has anyone ever considered doing that and that? When they reach that phase, they begin to go through and start categorizing open reports to figure out what will be included in the release to market version and what will be held in abeyance for future change cycles. TLDR, things are progressing as expected, and they are mostly happy with the airplane in its current form. There are still items they want to address, so it isn't quite ready for you yet. Now, if we leave the 777 behind now for a moment and go over to the 737, there is quite some exciting news there as well. Most certainly for Xbox users, but also for PC users. So going over to the 737, the tablet development team has begun moving some of the new features that have been in testing in the 777 backwards into the 737. Items that have traditionally appeared in the FMS as options or settings and game controls are now making an appearance in the tablet using a graphical interface for those users who would rather control them through that channel. And as this implementation accelerates, they thought it might be time to start rolling some of them backwards to the 737 tablet. The tablet dev team has asked for some testing time so that they can get those into the release pipeline for 737 users, and that is likely to happen during February, although the exact timeline is a bit fuzzy. A little note there, do take that last word, the release timeline is a bit fuzzy. Serious. Robert is not promising a February release here, but he is saying that these things are getting tested through February now. Alright, now let's talk about Xbox for a moment, where there is some significant progress. I believe you all will remember that PMDG encountered issues with the communication between the Universal Flight Tablet and the simulator on the Xbox platform, which Asobo said there shouldn't be at all, because they said, well, that should be the identical same simulator. You will remember PMDG started to collect some data for that they wanted to show to Asobo to prove that there were bugs involved in the basic simulator that prevented the tablet from functioning correctly. Now, here's what Robert posted in his latest update regarding that. Last week, we heard back from Asobo regarding the data we collected to demonstrate that the communications features in Microsoft Flight Simulator appeared not to be working when run on a production Xbox console, thus breaking the airplane and tablet interface when the 737 is used on an Xbox console. There has been some back and forth discussion, and we learned earlier in the week that the problem has been identified and resolved. We have a follow-up inquiry in place to see if we cannot gain some insight into exactly when the fix will land on Xbox units so that they can begin pushing backlogged updates to the Xbox community, but they haven't received an answer to that inquiry as of this writing. All the same, this is very good news, as it would seem to indicate that the effort on data collection in the live Xbox environment proved beneficial, and we will finally be back to keeping our Xbox and PC customers in parallel status, which makes us quite happy. I'm a bit risk averse. I want to avoid one asterisk in this duplication. We've not had an opportunity to test the fix, and we do not know if it was tested on actual hardware where the problem existed, or emulators where the problem never existed. So I want to urge a bit of calm in the anticipation level as we await an opportunity to test and see it for ourselves. We'll pass along more information as we get it. So this is quite a good news there, that there is good progress in regards to getting the tablet finally to Xbox, which obviously is causing quite a bit of unhappiness, and totally understandably so, amongst the users. Now, there is also one update on Xbox users and liveries, and Robert says about it that, quote, "We are evaluating a long-term strategy to expand the number of liveries available to our Xbox customers across the entire PMDG product spectrum. There is a wide range of legal and technical questions that have to be evaluated and correctly answered, but our goal is to improve our ability to widen when is available for Xbox users as we move into the post-777 release phase. This has been an important issue for our Xbox customers, and we want to make sure we have a clear-eyed understanding of what the future looks like for livery distribution in both Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024 before committing resources to that task. But please do know this is on the agenda and under discussion currently. When I have more information to share, we will." Alright, so that sums up the PMDG update from the 3rd of February. Rest assured, I'm now going to head right into this simulator, flying this lovely Egypt Air Boeing 737 over to Dubai, and thereafter I might probably go into a little bit of beta testing, but we will see about that. By the way, you don't even need to search on VATSIM for it. You are not going to find any hints as to which 777 version might or might not get released. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I do hope that you enjoyed this little update, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one. In the meantime, if you did like the video, be sure to leave a like on YouTube as well, as it does really help out the channel. Be sure to leave a comment to let me know what you think about the latest update, and finally, don't forget to subscribe if you're up for more. Thank you very much for watching, and see you all again on the next one.